Alright, reading at the park with Aristotle. The scope of incontinence. We begin the examination with this question. Are the continent and the incontinent person distinguished from others? 1, by their concerns, or 2, by their attitudes to them. In other words, is the incontinent person incontinent? Only by having these concerns, or instead by having this attitude, or instead by both. Surely 3 is right, for 1 is insufficient, since the simple incontinent is not concerned with everything, but with the same things as the intemperate person. Moreover, 2 is insufficient, since he is not incontinent simply by being inclined towards these things. That would make incontinence the same as intemperance. Rather, as 3 implies, he is incontinent by being inclined towards them in this way. For the intemperate person acts on decision when he is led on, since he thinks it is right in every case to pursue the pleasant thing at hand. But the incontinent person thinks it is wrong to pursue it, yet still pursues it. Solution to the first puzzle. What sort of knowledge does the incontinent person have or lack? It does not matter whether he has knowledge or belief. It is claimed that the incontinent person's action conflicts with true belief, not with knowledge. But whether it is knowledge or belief that he does not matter. But whether it is knowledge or belief that he has does not matter for this argument. For some people with belief are in no doubt, but they think they have exact knowledge. If then it is the weakness of their conviction that makes people with belief, not people with knowledge, act in conflict with their supposition, it follows that knowledge will, for these purposes, be no different from belief. For as Heraclitus makes clear, some people's convictions about what they believe are no weaker than other people's convictions about what they know. But does it matter whether knowledge is actual or potential? It is merely potential if we are not attending to it. But we speak of knowing in 2 ways, and ascribe it both to someone who has it without using it and to someone who is using it. Hence it will matter whether someone has the knowledge that his action is wrong without attending to his knowledge, or both has and attends to it. For this second case seems extraordinary, but wrong action when he does not attend to his knowledge does not seem extraordinary. Or if we lack the premise about particulars. Oh man, I miss particulars all the time. Besides, since there are 2 types of premises, someone's action may well conflict with his knowledge. If he has both types of premises, but uses only the universal premise and not the particular premise, for the particular premise states the particulars and it is particular actions that are done. Or if we lack a universal term that we need. Moreover, in both types of premises, there are different types of universal. A, one type referring to the agent himself, and B, the other referring to the object. Perhaps someone knows that dry things benefit every human being, and that he himself is a human being, or that this sort of thing is dry, but he either does not have or does not activate the knowledge that this particular thing is of this sort. Hence, these ways of knowing and not knowing make such a remarkable difference that it seems quite intelligible for someone acting against his knowledge to have the one sort of knowledge, i.e., without B2. But astounding if he has the other sort, including B2. Or if our condition precludes the exercise of our knowledge. Besides, human beings may have knowledge in a way different from those we have described, for we see that having without using includes different types of having. Hence, some people, those asleep or mad or drunk, both have knowledge in a way and do not have it. Moreover, this is the condition of those affected by strong feelings. For emotions, sexual appetites, and some conditions of this sort clearly both disturb knowledge and disturb the body as well, and even produce fits of madness in some people. And this is the case that is relevant to incontinence. Clearly then, since incontinents are also affected by strong feelings, we should say that they have knowledge in a way similar to these people. Saying the words that come from knowledge is no sign of fully having it, for people affected in these ways even recite demonstrations and verses of Empedocles. Further, those who have just learnt something do not yet know it, though they string the words together, for it must grow into them, and this needs time. Hence we suppose that incontinents say the words in a way that actors do. How incontinence happens. Action requires the combination of universal and particular beliefs. Further, we may also look at the cause in the following way, referring to human nature. One belief, A, is universal, the other, B, is about particulars. And because they are particulars, perception controls them. And in the cases where these two beliefs result in C, one belief, it is necessary in purely theoretical beliefs for the soul to affirm what has been concluded. And in beliefs about production, D, to act at once on what has been concluded. If, for example, A, everything sweet must be tasted, and B, this someone particular thing is sweet, it is necessary, D, for someone who is able and unhindered also to act on this at the same time. But the incontinent person's appetite causes the normal combination to be disrupted. Suppose then that someone has A, the universal belief, and it hinders him from tasting. He has B, the second belief, that everything sweet is pleasant, and this is sweet, and this belief, B, is active, and he also has appetite, hence the belief C tells him to avoid this. But appetite leads him on, since it is capable of moving each of the bodily parts. The result, then, is that in a way reason and belief make him act incontinently. The belief B is contrary to correct reason. The belief B is contrary to correct reason, A. But only coincidentally, Nope, it is coincidentally. Not in itself. For it is the appetite, not the belief, that is contrary in itself to correct reason. Hence, beasts are not incontinent because they have no universal supposition, but only appearance and memory of particulars. How incontinence involves ignorance. How is ignorance resolved? So that the incontinent person recovers his knowledge. That's a good fucking question. The same account that applies to someone drunk or asleep applies here too, and is not special to this way of being affected. We must hear it from the natural scientists. And since the last premise B is a belief about something perceptible and controls action, this must be what the incontinent person does not have when he is being affected. Or rather, the way he has it is not knowledge of it, but as we saw, merely saying the words, as the drunk says the words of Empedocles. Further, since the last term does not seem to be universal, or expressive of knowledge in some way as the universal term, even the result Socrates was looking for would seem to come about. For the knowledge that is present with someone when someone is affected by incontinence, and that is dragged about because he is affected, is not the sort that seems to be knowledge to the full extent in C, but only perceptual knowledge in B. So much then for knowing and not knowing, and for how it is possible to know and still act incontinently. Solution to the fifth puzzle. Who is simply incontinent? Incontinent means stupid, in case y'all didn't know. Or ignorant. I like stupid. Next, we say whether anyone is simply incontinent or all incontinents are incontinent in some particular way. And if someone is simply incontinent, we must say what sorts of things he is incontinent about. Types of pleasures. First of all, both the continent and resistant person and the incontinent and soft person are evidently concerned with pleasures and pains. Some sources of pleasure are necessary, others are choice-worthy in themselves, but can be taken to excess. The necessary ones are the bodily conditions, i.e., those that concern food, sexual intercourse, and the sorts of bodily conditions that we took to concern temperance and intemperance. Other sources of pleasure are not necessary, but are choice-worthy in themselves, e.g., victory, honor, wealth, and similar good and pleasant things. Incontinence in particular ways. When people go to the excess, in conflict with the correct reason in them, in the pursuit of these sources of pleasure, we do not call them simply incontinent, but add the condition that they are incontinent about wealth, gain, honor, or emotion, and not simply incontinent. For we assume they are different and called incontinent only because of a similarity, just as the Olympic victor named Human was different, since for him the common account of human being was only a little different from his special one, but it was different nonetheless. A sign in favor of what we say is the fact that incontinence is blamed not only on an error, but as vice, either uncontrollable or partial, while none of these conditions is blamed as a vice. Simple incontinence. Now consider the people concerned with the bodily gratifications, those that we take to concern the temperate and intemperate person. Some of these people go to excess in pursuing these pleasant things and avoiding painful things, hunger, thirst, heat, cold, and all that concerns touch and taste. Not, however, because they have decided on it, but in conflict with their decision and thought. These are the people called simply incontinent, not with the added condition that they are incontinent about anger. These are the people called simply incontinent, not with the added condition that they are incontinent about, e.g., anger. A sign of this is the fact that people are also called soft about these bodily pleasures, but not about any of the non-necessary ones. The incontinent person and the intemperate person. This is also why we include the incontinent and the intemperate person, and the continent and the temperate person in the same class, but do not include any of those who are incontinent in some particular way. It is because the incontinent and the intemperate person are concerned in a way with the same pleasures and pains. In fact, they are concerned with the same things, but not in the same way. The intemperate person decides on them, but the incontinent person does not. Hence, if someone has no appetites, or slight ones, for example, for excesses, but still pursues them and avoids moderate pains, we will take him to be more intemperate than the person who does it because he has intense appetites. For think of the lengths he would go to if he also acquired vigorous appetites and felt severe pains at the lack of necessities. Non-vicious incontinence. Some pleasant things are naturally choice-worthy, some naturally the opposite, some in between, as we divided them earlier. Hence, some appetites and pleasures are for fine and excellent kinds of things, example, wealth, profit, victory, and honor. About all these and about the things in between, people are blamed not for feeling an appetite and love for them, but for doing so in a particular way, namely to excess. Some people are overcome by or pursue some of these naturally fine and good things to an extent that conflicts with reason. Example, they take honor or children or parents more seriously than is right. For though these are certainly good and people are praised for taking them seriously, still excess about them is also possible. It is excessive if someone fights, as Niobe did, for her children, even with the gods, or regards his father as Satyrus, nicknamed the father lover, did, for he seemed to be excessively silly about it. There is no vice here, for the reason we have given, since each of these things is naturally choice-worthy for itself, though excess about them is bad and to be avoided. Similarly, there is no incontinence here either, since incontinence is not merely to be avoided, but also blameworthy, and these conditions are not. But because it is a similar way of being affected, people call it incontinence, adding the condition that is incontinence about this or that, just so they call someone a bad doctor or a bad actor, though they would never call him simply bad, since each of these conditions is not vice, but only similar to it by analogy. It is likewise clear that the only condition we should take to be continence or incontinence is the one concerned with what concerns temperance and intemperance. We speak of incontinence about emotion because of the similarity to simple incontinence, and hence add the condition that someone is incontinent about emotion, as we do with honor or gain. Simple incontinence must be distinguished from bestial and diseased states. Some things are naturally pleasant, and some of these are unconditionally pleasant, while others correspond to differences between kinds of animals and of human beings. Other things are not naturally pleasant, but deformities or habits or degenerate natures make them pleasant. And we can see states concerned with each of these that are similar to states concerned with naturally pleasant things. Bestiality. By bestial states, I mean, example, the female being who is said to tear pregnant women apart and devour the children, or the pleasures of some of the savage people around the Black Sea, who are reputed to enjoy raw meat and human flesh, while some trade their children to each other to feast on, or what is said about Phalaris, the states are bestial. These states are bestial. Disease. Other states are caused by attacks of disease, and in some cases by fits of madness. Example, the person who sacrificed his mother and ate her, and the one who ate the liver of his fellow slave. Other states result from disease conditions or from habit. Example, plucking hairs, chewing nails, even coal and earth. And besides these, sexual intercourse between males, for in some people these result from a diseased nature, and others from habit. As example, in those who have suffered wanton sexual assault since their childhood. These conditions allow only the qualified kind of incontinence or vice. Whenever nature is the cause, no one would call these people incontinent, any more than woman would be called incontinent for being mounted rather than mounting. The same applies to those who are in a diseased state because of habit. Each of these states, then, is outside the limits of vice, just as bestiality is. If someone who has them overcomes them or is overcome by them, that is not simple continence or incontinence, but the type so called from similarity, just as someone who is overcome by emotion should be called incontinent in relation to his feelings, but not simply incontinent. Among all of the excesses of foolishness, cowardice, intemperance, and irritability, some are bestial, some diseased. If, for example, someone's natural character makes him afraid of everything, even the noise of a mouse, he is a coward with a bestial sort of cowardice. Another person was afraid of a weasel because of an attack of disease. Among foolish people, also, those who naturally lack reason and live only by perception are bestial, as some races of distant foreigners do. Those who are foolish because of attacks of disease, example epilepsy, or because of fits of madness, are diseased. Sometimes it is possible to have some of these conditions without being overcome. Example, if Phalaris had an appetite to eat a child or for some bizarre sexual pleasure, but restrained it, it is also possible to be overcome by these conditions and not merely to have them. Alright, we return to the scope of incontinence. One sort of vice is human, and this is called simple vice. Another sort is called vice with an added condition, and is said to be bestial or diseased vice, but not simple vice. Similarly, then, it is also clear that one sort of incontinence is bestial, another diseased, but only the incontinence corresponding to human intemperance is simple incontinence. It is clear then that incontinence and continence apply only to the concerns of intemperance and temperance. And for other things there is another form of incontinence, so called by transference of the name and not simply. Simple incontinence is worse than incontinence in emotion. Simple incontinence is less closely related to reason. Moreover, let us observe incontinence about emotion is less shameful than incontinence about appetites. For, first of all, emotion would seem to hear reason a bit, but to mishear it. It is like over hastily servants who run out before they have heard all their instructions, and then carry them out wrongly, or dogs who bark at any noise at all, before investigating to see if it is a friend. In the same way, since emotion is naturally hot and hasty, it hears but does not hear the instruction, and rushes off to exact a penalty. For reason or appearance has shown that we are being slighted or wantonly insulted, and emotion, as though it had inferred that it is right to fight this sort of thing, is irritated at once. Appetite, however, only needs reason or perception to say that it is pleasant, and it rushes off for gratification. Hence, emotion follows reason in a way, but appetite does not. Therefore, incontinence about appetite is more shameful, for if someone is incontinent about emotion, he is overcome by reason in a way. But if he is incontinent about appetite, he is overcome by appetite, not by reason. Trying to find a page. Give me 1 second. You know what? That's it.